not forget, Tom, earlier this year, Donald Trump, a man who I don't like to give credit to for anything, came into office shortly before he...
Something truly explosive just went down, and you need to see it. Mehdi Hasan didn't just go back and forth with a British reporter. He absolutely dismantled him, piece by piece, in a way that left no room for spin. This wasn't one of those polite, watered-down debates where both sides walk away untouched. No. Mehdi went straight for the heart of the issue, exposing the uncomfortable truth about what Israel, Netanyahu, and their government are really doing on the ground in Gaza. And the way he laid it out? Brutal, precise, unshakable. What makes this moment different is the weight behind every word. Every claim was confronted, every excuse ripped apart until nothing was left standing but reality. This wasn't about sound bites. This was about truth colliding with propaganda in real time. And the propaganda didn't survive. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now watch closely, because what you're about to see is bigger than a debate. It's a clash that reveals just how twisted the narrative on Gaza has become and why voices like Mehdi Hasan's are so crucial right now.
I mean, I would say don't be surprised by these reports. Some of us have been saying for 22 months that this was the goal, that this was never about hostages. This was never an anti-terror operation. This was an excuse by the Israeli far right, which controls the Israeli government right now, to use the horror show, the massacres, the war crimes of October the 7th, to go back into Gaza and take back the land. It's always been about the land for these folks. And they're not hiding it. They've been saying it for months. And now Netanyahu's saying what his own cabinet ministers have been saying for months. Every time I came on a show like this and cited a cabinet minister, someone from the pro-Israel side would say, well, they're not the prime minister, they're not the main person, they're not in the war cabinet. Well, now you've got Netanyahu being quoted by security sources saying that this is the plan. They're doing it. They have a green light from the president of the United States. And this is what many of us warned about and worried about.
I guess part of the answer, or could be, unless you're right, that the whole aim was to reoccupy Gaza, that if Hamas were to release the hostages, there would be, one would have thought, no logical need to go and reoccupy the whole of Gaza until they do.
So a couple of things. I mean, we've been in hostage negotiations on and off for 22 months, especially since last summer when Joe Biden put out that plan and it was supposed, they blamed Hamas and the UN were involved and we've had back and forths. We had a ceasefire, let's not forget, Tom, earlier this year. Donald Trump, a man who I don't like to give credit to for anything, came into office shortly before he was sworn in, got this ceasefire. Some of us warned it was a fake ceasefire. It lasted only a couple of months because the Israelis never planned to stick with it. And Israel unilaterally broke that ceasefire, went back to war, imposed a siege, blocked infant formula and nappies from going into Gaza, and we are where we are. Israeli ministers, Tom, just to be clear to the LBC audience, say again and again that the hostages are not their priority. Those are not my words. The finance minister has said this. The settlements minister has said this. The heritage minister has said this. In fact, last week, Eliyahu, one of the ministers in Netanyahu's government, said we are racing ahead to totally destroy Gaza. We're going to make it all Jewish. I mean, there's no mention of the hostages in that statement. They have a very clear ideological goal, and, when people tell you who they are, believe them the first time.
So what do you see as if there is, what is the day after this war looking like, more and more, in your view?
Yeah, so that was a question posed. I mean, I've been talking about this since the very beginning, both when I was, I had my show at MSNBC and then I've been doing interviews like this. And when I'm asked that question, the assumption is the war is ending. And I don't think the war is ending. I think Netanyahu, for both political and ideological reasons, is dragging this out. His own generals have told him there's no strategic value in dragging this out. I don't know if you saw on Sunday, I think it was, 19 former Israeli security chiefs, the heads of Mossad, Shin Bet, the military, the police have come out saying there is no strategic goal here. We are not winning this war. We have not saved the hostages. This is about Netanyahu trying to save his own backside from going to prison. This is about him preserving his cabinet. So the premise of your question is slightly problematic because it implies there is some end point when the Israelis have made it clear there isn't an end point. This is full-on ethnic cleansing, and the President of the United States has given them a green light.
Recent history, relatively recent history, suggests it doesn't go well if you try and occupy a part of the world that is fundamentally hostile to you, to the forces that are going to attempt to occupy it. You'll be in something close to a forever war.
Yeah, which is what, so two things. One is you're right, and that's why so many military chiefs and experts are saying we shouldn't be doing this. There's no military value in occupying Gaza in this way. That's one point. The other point, of course, is that, let's just be clear, again, for the LBC audience, just to understand the law here, Gaza is occupied, according to the International Court of Justice, according to the United Nations. Even though the Israelis pulled out their, even though the Israelis pulled out their settlers in 2005, they removed the settlements from Gaza. They controlled Gaza's air, land borders, waters, who goes in and out, what goes in and out. So that's what the Gazans have been under for a siege for a while. Both Gaza and the West Bank are occupied under international law. What Netanyahu's proposing to do now is going an extra further and annexing Gaza, making Gaza part of Israel. And of course, here's the key point, which is what the world cannot tolerate, I hope, which is ethnically cleansing 2 million people from Gaza. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Balkans, Tom. Like, ethnic cleansing in Europe was seen as the greatest crime since World War II. The Serbs were the bad guys. Milosevic went to The Hague. This is what Israel's doing now on steroids.
One would have to disagree with your premise that this was the goal from the start in order to argue this, but let's, for argument's sake, walk it through.
Yep. Okay.
That if Hamas were to surrender and were to disarm, there would be no need, in theory, for Israel to worry about the security threat coming from Gaza if the organisation that committed terrorist atrocities on October the 7th ceased to exist.
Yeah, but I mean, if it ceased to exist, sure, but that's not how international politics works, right? You can't just fantasize a solution and make it happen. They do exist, right? They do exist. They are fighting. They haven't been destroyed by Israel. I mean, Israel's failed in its own goals of destroying Hamas. If that's a goal you support as an Israeli or supporter of Israel, it hasn't happened. That's why these 19 security chiefs are speaking out. The 19 security chiefs who are speaking out, the former heads of Mossad, they're not pro-Hamas, Tom, are they? They're not someone, no one would accuse any of them. They're saying that this is a war that isn't working, right? If anything, it's helping Hamas. Some of us said this on October 8th, 9th, 10th, 2023. If you do this, all you're doing is you are perpetuating the violence. If you kill thousands of Palestinians, leave thousands of Palestinian children orphaned, what do you think they're going to do other than join Hamas? If you destroy Hamas, you don't think...
But was that a rejection, Mehdi, of any attempt by Israel to kill the people who committed October the 7th? Were you implacably opposed to any sort of...
Not at all. Not at all. No. Not at all. I think that, look, again, Israel as a country was always going to respond to October the 7th. It would be ridiculous to think that Israel was going to do anything. The issue is how you respond.
Of course.
And those of us who'd seen Israel in 2014, in 2009, in 2018, remember the world did not begin on October the 7th, Tom. We have precedents. We have history. Yeah. Israel's been bombing and besieging Gaza for decades. The 2014 war, they killed hundreds of Palestinians, including kids. None of us, even I didn't imagine it would be this brutal, this prolonged, this destructive. It's an actual full-blown genocide at this point. So the question is, can Israel respond when its citizens are killed in a horrific massacre? Of course, every country should have a right to protect its citizens from being massacred, but no country has the right to do a genocide as part of its counter-terror operation. That's what you want to, or B, revenge. And again, this was always about vengeance. There's been reporting in the Israeli media, Tom, that from the very beginning, they were bombing sites that they were told there might be hostages there. And they said, we don't care. If you read the reporting from Plus 972, they were saying, we don't care. It was never about the hostages. It was about vengeance. It was about using this as an opportunity to go and try and destroy Hamas. It was about taking back the land.
Obviously, you use the word genocide there. That is an opinion rather than a fact of the court who have to rule on that for now.
To be fair, Tom, the British reporter in this debate, is not usually sloppy. Most of the time his coverage is sharp, calculated, and on point. But in this moment, he completely lost the thread. The second he tried to dismiss what's happening in Gaza as nothing more than an opinion about genocide, everything fell apart. And let's be honest here. How can anyone in good faith call this a matter of opinion? We're not talking about abstract theories. We're talking about images burned into the global conscience, about videos of families fleeing bombed-out neighborhoods, about Netanyahu and his ministers openly declaring intentions that go far beyond security. The evidence isn't hidden. It's right there, in plain sight, undeniable and relentless. That's exactly the point Mehdi Hasan hammered home. This was never truly about the hostages. That line has been fed to the public on repeat, like a broken record, designed to justify every escalation. But when you strip away the spin, the picture is crystal clear. This was always about the land, about control, about reoccupying Gaza fully and permanently. The hostage narrative, it was the perfect cover story, a shield for decisions that had already been made long before October 7th. Because if the real goal was to eliminate Hamas, as they claim, then why, after years of military campaigns, after countless strikes and blockades, has Hamas not disappeared? Why is the only consistent outcome the devastation of civilian life, the destruction of homes, the endless cycle of suffering? The logic doesn't hold, unless, of course, the mission was never really about Hamas at all. Thousands of families shattered, entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble, and yet, despite all of this, Hamas still exists. The reality is inescapable. The logic simply doesn't add up. Because if the true mission was to defeat Hamas, then why has every strike, every siege, every so-called operation only left civilians buried under the weight of destruction, while Hamas continues to operate? The truth is unavoidable. This isn't about Hamas. It's about redrawing borders. It's about carving up Gaza and expanding Israeli territory, brick by brick, life by life. And for Tom, or anyone for that matter, to look at this and still hesitate, still question whether this amounts to genocide, that isn't just misguided, it's absurd. Absolutely absurd. Because when the language, the policies, and the outcomes all point in the same direction, what else could it possibly be called? But here's the bigger picture. This isn't just about a single heated exchange on air. This is about a larger media war, a battle for narrative. And in that war, voices like Mehdi Hasan stand out because they're willing to say what so many others won't. They're willing to connect the dots that the establishment desperately tries to scatter, to call out what's deliberate, systematic, and undeniable. Because let's be clear, this was never about rescuing hostages. This was never about security. This is about control, about land, about the slow erasure of a people from their own home. And if we don't call it out now, history will. So what do you think? Was Mehdi right to rip through this narrative on live air? Or do you think Tom's hesitation represents the wider media's blind spot? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is a conversation that can't stay hidden. Until next time, this has been The Whip Line. Thanks for tuning in.